I understand it, it sort of, it kind of says to me,
I think I was talking to Rory and I said, everybody's from the kind of, more from sort of policies or with a background, and I said, it's not from PwC, so you head up the data
analytics, the public policy in AI, so people find out those things that, and then at some point it became obvious
in other ways we do very well,
engaging
are then going
in this
to be
conversation,
part
so
of the
like the
technology that might
bridging
make important
between the work we
decisions
do
about
internally,
their health
for
their livelihood in some way. I think there's a bit of a worry that
scientific colleagues
a little bit of distrust
and like in the intersection of the different.
I think there's a bit of a kind of accessibility angle there as well, where if people feel like it's something.
Yep, that's fine.
2 seconds is that. I think if people feel like it's very difficult and too challenging for them to understand, it might
look at Rory.
particularly marginalised groups.
You're like left and right.
Others. So
Ladies on the left, ladies on the right.
It's
usually the opposite panel.
It's
usually the opposite in most panels.
Yeah, but
it's the opposite.
I love that because I story because my background is
I love the diversity quota. Yeah, we sort of raised it. I loved it one time. There was a summit with FT, and they said that we don't want to be a manalist. So they're very, I love that term.
Technical
they always make sure that it's sort of well represented.
And finding ways to describe things that could be seen as quite complex in accessible ways is a real passion.
Yeah, well, you should also speak to my colleague Daisy, who is our outreach and engagement.
I've been told to wait a few seconds before we start, so that's what I'm doing.
Who does a lot of
We'll get going. But welcome.
Yeah, it would be nice to
Some water?
Brilliant.
come along and
So I'll get going. Hi everyone, and welcome to this session on ethics beyond AI as part of our 8th annual Digital Ethics Summit, which is very exciting. My name is Rory Daniels. I lead techUK's Emerging Technologies activity, so that's everything beyond AI, essentially. We have a team that do AI, and then I do just about everything else, including quantum, robotics, Web3, metaverse, gaming, space, and lots of other stuff. I don't think this conversation will be quite that expansive, but it should be quite broad, and we've got a fantastic range of panelists here that cover kind of so many of the key bases emerging tech-wise beyond AI, which I'm very excited to kind of touch upon. I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce ourselves, but before I do, I'm just going to give a little bit of an outline as to what this session is covering. And so essentially, we're going to be looking at the state of play regarding where ethics discussions are outside of the realms of AI, which, as many of us may know, has kind of taken a lot of the limelight in recent years and has seen, therefore, discussions progress at quite a pace. Lots of learnings to be had from that, but also lots of kind of differences that are important to recognise across other technologies in terms of kind of characteristics and how these principles are developed and later applied. And we'll be touching upon lots of that in this discussion. We'll also hopefully touch upon the point about data and the kind of digital infrastructure that underpins most of these technologies. And yeah, I'm hoping for it to be a really free-flowing and interesting conversation. Hopefully everyone's caffeinated and we will kind of get going. So I'm going to ask our panelists just to introduce themselves and explain kind of what they do and why they're here today. I'm going to start with Maria on my right, and then we'll come down this way.
Thank you, Rory. Good afternoon. Maria Extender from PwC UK. I'm the head of AI Public Policy and Ethics. In 2017, we did a piece of research to identify all the AI ethics principles that industry should and could adopt. And at the time, we identified 155 different sets of principles, and we scanned about 250 different documents. That was 2017-2018. And by the time we settled and we actually found a number of high-level principles that in the end have been discovered by or drafted by other organizations, global organizations, we realized very quickly the same ethical questions need to be asked in the context of digital technology, not just AI. AI is a subset. And in fact, the question about what are the ethical principles we should be applying to digital ethics came from our metaverse colleagues who just look at the principles and say, we should actually think how those principles apply in the metaverse domain. And that's how we ended up developing a set of digital ethics principles instead of AI. And then ever since, we've road tested them against different digital platform emerging and more established technology to see how we can leverage what we've learned from AI ethics in the wider world of digital technology, and how we can connect the dots.
Fantastic. Mona.
Yeah, hello everyone. So I'm Mona Dash. I basically manage the sales or customer relationships for our AI practice, which is AI and automation, and it's branded as Infosys Topaz. Now, for those who don't know Infosys, we are a global systems integrator. We are one of the, I think we're sort of about 18 billion in revenue. We've got some 350,000 employees, so very global, though we are headquartered in India. And one of the things as well I'd like to say is we've been rated for the last 4 years as one of the most ethical companies in the way we conduct business and the way we hold sort of governance and policies. And this is something which we take quite sort of to our heart apart from being rated across multiple other sort of parameters. I think the part that we've been rated as a leader in sort of by Ethisphere is something which we really regard. And obviously my role is, I think I'm slightly different from the other panelists because I'm not really from the, I'm not from kind of a policymaker or anything like that, but where we look at sales, and I'm evangelizing AI solutions, especially generative AI. But I think the part about responsible AI and the kind of responsible by design approach is something we, again, take very seriously within Infosys, and we have a responsible AI office. Similarly, like I guess what PwC has done, we've had this since a few years. We work very closely with different governments and policymakers, academicians to make sure that our solutions are all sort of underpinned by the responsible by approach. And I think it's really my privilege to be here because this is a really great, personally as well, I really like this sort of intersection between where we see technology and innovation going, but we do need to look at obviously the digital ethics part of it, and that's what is really interesting to be here.
Fantastic, thanks Mona. Asha.
I'm Asha Easton, and I'm from the Innovate UK Immersive Tech Network. We're part of Innovate UK, which is the part of the government that does all the kind of research and development grant funding for businesses. So with the network, we work on basically helping to grow the immersive tech industry, connecting industry, academia, and the government. We do a number of different things in there, but I won't explain all of them. But the part that's relevant to this is that we actually just launched an ethics working group. The ethical development of immersive technology is something that I'm very personally passionate about. And we're trying to use this working group to kind of corral all of the people in the sector in the UK that are doing anything to address any of these kind of ethical challenges in this tech area. It took us 1.5 years to even scope out setting up the group because we didn't want to just set something up to become a talking shop, and there's so many issues to address. We wanted to kind of narrow down a bit of a focus. But just for a sake of letting everyone understand kind of what came out of those scoping group workshops with industry and academia, these are the kind of like broad issues that kind of came up. So issues around policy, law, and regulation, and the applicability and enforceability of criminal and civil laws, and human rights in virtual worlds, the different issues across hardware and software in an increasingly complex industry landscape, harassment and abuse, including child abuse in virtual worlds, issues around embodiment, which includes like the use of biometrics, haptics, and sensors, data and privacy, including surveillance. And has anyone heard the term biometric psychography? Show of hands. No, I might expand on that later. Fragmented research communities and a lack of research funding, product funding models within the major tech companies like Meta, etc., and the lack of transparency around them, a lack of industry knowledge around these issues, and shared language to explain them across industry and academia, and an unequal access to immersive technologies and the digital divide globally. So lots of issues in the sector. Obviously, we're not looking to solve them all. Just trying to bring together the community and try to identify what impact we can potentially have on any of this number of challenges. And one other thing that we did earlier this year is we collaborated with our responsible innovation lead within Innovate UK to do an event that looked mostly at kind of child harms and safeguarding
in virtual space, which we did with Interpol and a number of different academics and industry people.
Amazing. Thanks, Asha. Natasha.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Natasha Orton. I'm Quantum Computing Policy and Ethics Lead at the UK's National Lab for Quantum Computing, the National Quantum Computing Centre, or NQCC. And our goal at the NQCC is really to catalyse quantum readiness. And we work to do that across a broad range of things, but including working on technology development itself, providing access to quantum compute infrastructure, and also enable the ecosystem. I lead our work on responsible and ethical quantum computing, which feeds into that, enabling the ecosystem. We think it's really important that along with this new and potentially transformative emerging technology, that we take action now to make sure that it's developed responsibly. I also am currently chair of the Responsible Quantum Industry Forum, which is an initiative that we set up along with techUK and also UK Quantum as industry co-chairs. And this was in response to feedback from the ecosystem that we received that said that often, in this nascent field of quantum computing, quantum technology, we have a range of organisations who really do want to do the right thing but might not know where to start. And so we founded this forum to create a venue for sharing best practices and how we can put responsible innovation into practice. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion and hearing from my fellow panellists, because I think there's a lot that we can learn from other emerging technologies as well.
Absolutely. Got to take my hat off and congratulate you on such a varied panel, like so much expertise. My name's Emma Thwaites. I'm the Director of Global Policy and Corporate Affairs at the Open Data Institute. And I have to confess, I'm not 100% today. I've been a little bit under the weather, so please forgive me if I read my notes rather than riffing quite as much as I would normally do. So the ODI was founded in London in 2012 by Sir Tim Berners-Lee and Nigel Shadbolt. The objective of the organisation is to create an open and trustworthy data infrastructure. So we don't just work in open data, we work with data across the spectrum. And our mission really over the past 2 years, particularly since the advent in the mass market of generative AI, has been to ensure that people think about the data that is the feedstock of the technology. In previous narratives, we found that all too often it was neglected, but actually I'm very pleased to say that more recently people have really started to think about issues surrounding the data. Because data, of course, is foundational for most technologies, and unethical use of data, collection of data, or indeed decisions made with data that has intrinsic biases will ultimately lead to unethical technology, regardless of what that technology is. So this includes a whole variety of things, including the abuse and exploitation of workers in the gig economy, something we don't hear about enough, in my view, practices that contribute to the climate crisis, and data that contains biases, as I say, and leads to really poor algorithmic decisions. We should be conscious of all of this. For technology to really work for society, it has to be trusted. And so we believe that transparency and openness are at the heart of the issue. And I'm really pleased to hear colleagues on the panel talking about those things as being foundational. So yeah, basically, if you don't have trust, you can't responsibly and ethically deploy technology. So yeah, those would be the points that I would bring to the table.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emma. So brilliant. So I'm going to ask the first question to our panel, which is, maybe, Maria, I'll come to you first of all, and it's about, obviously we're in the UK, and in many ways we're leading on the development of a lot of these principles and on the development of a lot of these technologies as well, be it quantum or AI. How important do you think it is that we as a country and as the industry, government within the UK, are leading on these principles? And maybe to that, you could speak a little bit about, you've identified as PwC hundreds of them yourselves. Just why did you do that? Why did you see the need to kind of delve into all of that?
I'll start with the last part of the questions, because I have something to add about UK's competitive advantage, and it has to do with the post office. where we can learn a lot about the consequences of technology, not even as sophisticated as AI. So we are a professional service company. We don't do research. We're not in academia. And for us, this was a new domain. And we wanted to understand what's the art of the possible when it comes to a domain like AI ethics. What is it and how we should apply it in practice? And parallel with us, there is a different panel about what it is to be an AI ethicist. So making this transition between the theoretical knowledge that existed in academia and applicability in the industry was the challenge we were trying to address. But the first, we're trying to find out what are the rules, because with the first we got to learn about the domain, it was too broad, too theoretical. We didn't know what to do with it. So we first went to go, okay, what are the rules? We can then apply, translate into practical application. And when we ended up putting it together, we realized there's a lot of overlap because those principles have been drafted by tech companies, non-for-profit, multinational organizations, and the secret was in the language. There was you'd expect the technical companies to focus a lot on the technology itself, so about fairness in data, in the models, and explainability and transparency in the data, in the models, but not so much about the context implication. Again, this was 2017, 2018, when we were not really aware of the actual implication of this technology. And I remember when we put together a risk taxonomy for the first time, with the help of our AI Center of Excellence, was again groundbreaking, because besides the societal and business level risk, we started identifying the failures within an AI system. And then more we took it and put it in front of clients, they all looked like, no, AI, it's like this fabulous technology will never fail us. Again, this is 2017, 2018. And it was really hard to convince our audience the fact that technology comes with strings attached. Until we started seeing failures reported in the news. And perhaps that changed the balance was the Amazon AI recruitment tool. I think I mentioned it in almost every single panel. Why was that such a unique experiment? It was developed by one of the best engineering teams in the world. At the time, were led by Professor Neil Lawrence. And I got to chat with him to understand what did he actually do to address the bias for that specific tools. And he said, we did everything from an engineering perspective, but we couldn't do anything from a context perspective because we are just engineers. And then the failure of that tool, if you don't know, Amazon built an AI recruitment tool that ended up discriminating women because 70% of the workforce of Amazon at the time was white male. And that was the moment when we discovered that engineering intervention is not enough. We need to be able to look at the context. It probably was the first time we started acknowledging that perhaps the way we frame AI, it's not the most appropriate one, which is not just a general purpose technology. The context has a very important contribution to how the technology itself is going to be shaped. And that's when we started looking at the principles, allowing us to navigate the journey, not just into understanding the technology, but the implication. And with those misuses being reported in the media, we started having the ammunition to say, you don't want to be Amazon, you don't want to be Goldman Sachs and Apple Card, who like a few years later has found themselves into a similar very hot waters. And then since then, now we have a repository of bad AI because those incidents happen now very regularly. And the reason I wanted to leave the last and the UK competitive advantage, we also had the post office scandal. And it took us decades to understand how the failure in technology has destroyed the life of individuals. Then we've seen in the Netherlands how a similar algorithms has destroyed lives of social services claimants. And then we had the A-level results. So to a certain extent, we had first-hand failures of technology. But the very good news is that we also have the experts and the desire to actually make a difference. And what I'm probably most proud of the work we've done in the AI UK ecosystem with many colleagues here in the room. I see Ray, and the lovely Ada Lovelace, and Felicity and her team, was to actually say that we are able to come together, bring the different domains of expertise from academia, public society, and industry, and create some sort of framework, but also the mindset that will allow us to stop those practices to repeat themselves and develop new approaches. And perhaps where we continue to lead is that we lead with a mindset. Is technology comes with implications, and we need to be able to change the mindset, not just of the developers who have been operating with the principle, oh, just because I can, I should do it, but to embed the duty of care. Then when you look at the data set, especially in private sector, public sector, education, health, that data is about people. And then we should have a duty of care, because when we crunch numbers, we affect people's lives. But we're doing a great job, and I'm very confident that we'll continue to lead internationally and actually showcase to the world how it's being done.
Sure. No, thanks for that, Maria. That's really interesting, and one or two things that I'd maybe like to unpack a little bit in this discussion. Asha, I'd like to ask to kind of delve a bit more into a particular sector, and that's being the immersive sector. Obviously, for Innovate UK to start, or the Immersive Tech Network, to start an ethics working group,
Yeah.
does that signal that there's a long way to go for industry in starting to tackle these challenges, or you saw the right expertise and you thought to convene them? You know, what was the inception behind that working group?
So the inception was really about, well, first of all, this whole concept of biometric psychography was basically, just in a nutshell, it's a relatively new term, but it's basically the idea that you can kind of predict people's thoughts and what they're going, their actions, what they're going to do based off of their biometric data. And the amount of biometric data that can be already, when I started in the industry, okay, headsets did not collect biometric data, okay? Now, all your eye movements, your lip movement, your face tracking, you put sensors on your body, like, it is crazy how much data it gets harvested off you. There's one study about the game called Beat Saber, this one game, kind of like chop blocks in the air. You play that game for 10 minutes, and they can already tell from your gait who you are with 98% or something like that. You play it for 10 seconds, and it's 75% accuracy of identifying who you are based off of just your gait. That's just one thing. Okay, so it's something that it's kind of an industry of cowboys, I think, the immersive tech space. It's a lot of those kinds of people really working at the cutting edge of where things are blending. And I think there's this, the way that it's rapidly moving and the way that the hardware is changing so quickly, the questions aren't really being asked at the same time. They are, and people care, but it's moving too quickly to regulate, let's just put it that way. So I just think it's really important to make sure that we keep pushing those conversations as much as we can, keep pushing those conversations with the hardware providers as much as we can. And that's kind of the idea behind it. There's another bit of work that's going on right now, and it's funded by the EU, called XR for Human, which is really, really interesting. And they're trying to develop an ethical code of practice for the XR space. So that's a European initiative. And so my idea with the ethics working group was also, get that kind of UK perspective aligned and feed into some more of these kind of international initiatives that are going on, which are, again, all quite fragmented at the moment. So.
Sure. Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I like your industry of cowboys.
Yeah.
Term. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Natasha. I don't know if you describe quantum as an industry of cowboys, maybe not. But just how advanced is the development of such principles in the UK, with a view to quantum and your role in the Responsible Quantum Industry Forum? But can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to stay silent on whether quantum is
Fair
an
enough.
industry of cowboys.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so it's great timing to ask that question, because actually the Responsible Quantum Industry Forum that I mentioned, we launched our industry co-developed principles for responsible quantum technologies a few weeks ago. We've been very pleased to see the reception that they've had so far. They've also been endorsed by the Science Minister, so I think that signifies the kind of the power of these kind of industry bottom-up initiatives. I think quantum, I should say as well, for those that aren't so familiar with quantum technologies, quantum technologies is a very broad term, including quantum sensors, quantum communication, quantum computing, and they're at different levels of technology development. So these questions apply that have different answers depending on what technology you're looking at. Specifically from a quantum computing point of view, people will tell you anything between 10 and 20 years for when, 5 and 20 years even for when quantum computers might be practically useful. But I think some of these questions are further out for us, and it's harder to understand exactly what the societal and ethical implications might be. But I think there's a real need to set the frameworks, to upskill people on thinking about these ethical questions now at this stage so that we are ready as the technology evolves. And I think maybe I'll stop there because I don't want to take up too much time.
Sure. No, that's really good to hear. And I think later I'll ask you if you can signpost how people can maybe get involved with your work
absolutely.
on quantum.
Yeah.
That'd be really good. I'm going to come to Mona next for a question about responsible AI by design. And just how Infosys approaches that topic. And then I'll come to Emma on a kind of broader data, and where does data sit within this whole question piece. So Mona.
Sure, yeah. I think, we, I was mentioning before that we just see that the responsible by design approach kind of cuts across, and this was one of the reasons why we actually launched what we call Infosys Topaz, which is essentially our so we've been working in the space of AI and automation for several years, and everybody knows that. I think people in the practitioners know that AI is not like literally 2 years old, which is when obviously ChatGPT came and stormed the world. So we've been working in the space for a while, and what we did though with Topaz was we brought together all these solutions and offerings under one umbrella, because the whole idea is with generative AI especially. I think the thing it did do was it gave a real fillip to the whole responsible AI approach, because though we were doing AI and some of the issues about data which has come about, that was always existing when we had ML models and when you're kind of ingesting vast volumes of data. But it's become more and more important simply because we mentioned several incidents have been rising with generative AI, and it will keep rising. So that was the reason why we brought that together, and what that means is all the solutions we develop, we make sure that it's responsible. I mean, the data, it's both the input and the output of the data, that the data is being consumed in sort of as transparent and as explainable way as possible, and the output obviously is made sure that the outcome and the output is also done in a responsible way. And we try to do that in the solutions we have, because we've actually ingested a lot of the solutions internally. So all the Topaz solutions, we've kind of rolled it out within the organization as assistants, or role-based assistants, or sort of platforms, AI platforms, and we try to do the same for our customers, which is why we have this responsible AI office. And I know it sounds very sort of formal. There's this head of responsible AI, somebody who's one of my colleagues in Bangalore, and I know it sounds very sort of proper and everything, but what we are doing there is that a small example, like all the SOWs we have now with our customers, if there is any mention of AI, whether it's an AI use case or even people, they need to be sort of vetted by the responsible AI office, that what is the use case, is that sort of adhering to whatever policies, EU Act for example, which is coming up next year. So all of that actually is vetted. And from the other hat, which is obviously about sales and business point of view, the question is that, is this slowing us down? So obviously you do have even sort of colleagues in sales who are like wondering that, oh my God, now I have to get this SOW vetted by somebody, and that's going to slow down everything, and I have to tell the client that this is a delay. But all said and done, we still need to get that done, because if we don't, then the repercussions could come up next year. So that's just one of the small things we're doing. But like I said, we are making sure that however we, the output is all, and we also have a responsible AI platform actually, which we use internally and which we're sort of open sourcing to our customers, which is all about like having the right kind of guardrails, both the legal, process, technical guardrails. So that's something which we are also offering and making sure that it's kind of embedded with our solutions.
Brilliant, thanks Mona. Yeah, really useful I think to hear about how these are being embedded and adopted within organisations in today. So thanks for that. Emma, I'm going to come to you, and you mentioned earlier that data is fundamental or foundational to most technologies.
Absolutely. I might get a little bit political now, not party political, forgive me. First of all, really interesting, this language around cowboys and, frontier AI, because, we've often heard the tech space described as the Wild West. And unfortunately, what that I think that has led to is this notion that the sort of the Silicon Valley tech bro language around asking for permission rather than forgiveness, or asking for forgiveness rather than permission, and practices which it's almost like we can't conduct the necessary checks and balances on our technology or on the data that we're using to feed that technology, because that would just take too long. So let's not bother to do that. And I think that that's really problematic, actually, because we do have a concentration of power in the hands of a very few people. I worry when politicians start to talk about how, they are engaging with technology companies in a sort of statecraft fashion, because these companies have a responsibility to their shareholders first and foremost. I'm not saying that they are intrinsically unethical. I wouldn't make that claim. We've probably got representatives in the room here today. However, to the point about Horizon, it worries me that there seems to be such a little dance of seduction going on with politicians in this country and in others, the offering of sort of free things. Free things are never free. There's always a price to pay. And the price is quite often our data, right? They get their hands on our data, and then instead of we, the people who contributed to that data, enabled the collection of that data, do not get to benefit from the spoils of whatever happens to it thereafter. So, I absolutely think we should be learning our lessons from Horizon and should not fall into the trap of having this sort of power asymmetry that results when you kind of concentrate power in the hands of 2 or 3 companies. Because the other thing about this is that they are not open and transparent about the data that's being used in particularly training their models, right? And I've heard it said more than once in sessions and events. Well, that bit's really difficult, the data bit, that's really challenging. So we shouldn't really worry about that. We should worry about the outputs. Let's just, it's nothing to see here. And actually, the ODI has been doing a piece of work recently, which we're, I think, going to publish before Christmas, it's called the AI Transparency Index. It's built on some earlier work by folks out of, I think it's Stanford University. And the findings are really stark. I can't quote numbers at you because, as I say, the research is not complete yet. But when you look at models and how many of them have some degree of transparency around the provenance of the data and how robust it is, and the checks and balances that have taken place to eliminate biases and all of these things, it's minuscule. It's tiny, and we as individual citizens should be much more aware of this. So I think we've got a communications job to do. And then the final point that I'd like to make is, we've got a lot of great things in the UK in the technology space that we're really, really good at. Despite what people might hear or think, our regulation in this country is really good. Other parts of the world look to the UK's regulatory frameworks. I think that's fantastic. We have great innovation. I do think we are really good at data. And the other thing we're really good at, actually, is it's ethics. We have some fantastic organisations in this country. So, I think that Ada Lovelace was mentioned, amazing organisation. In government, the Responsible Technology Adoption Unit, and we've got the Minderoo Centre for Democracy and Technology up there in Cambridge, connected by data, run by the amazing Jenny Tennyson, and of course we have the ODI. Now the problem is that we are not supporting these organisations properly. So, civil society is a very important sort of like, if you think of democracy as a tripod, where you have, government, private sector on one side, not-for-profit, civil society is the other leg. If you kick that away, you're in in my view, quite a dangerous situation. So, let's support our civil society organisations. I think our civil society organisations themselves could do more to work together. But for me, that expertise in ethics which exists within that sector is really strong and really powerful, and we should be proud of it and we should preserve it.
This is also one, just to jump in really quickly, one thing with the ethics. Well, we have a few new working groups, but part of it was discussing like, how do we not reinvent the wheel? How do we go and find like the lessons that have been learned in other industries already and like bring them in and make them relevant for this space, if they're not already. So that's such an important point to make, I think. And just to also maybe bolster your point on the data, which I also agree with. Sorry, there's not a lot of disagreement here today. But there was actually something funded by DCIT called the Cyber Physical Infrastructure Ecosystem. And basically they aligned with a number of the catapults, if everyone's familiar with the catapults in the country, to research basically cyber physical infrastructure being like looking at the intersection of all of these technologies. So data and, AI, immersive, they did sensors, built environment technologies. There was a whole bunch of them. I can't remember them off the top of my head, sorry. But they were trying to identify like what are the cross-sector problems and how do we, maybe put, not to say that this will result in any kind of funding. Don't quote me on this. I know I'm being recorded. But trying to identify like how can we figure out like what are these key issues, and then maybe support finding the issue that can then be applicable across all of these sectors instead of going, hey, let's do a funding call for each one, but they're all solving the same thing. And one of the key ones that came out was data, and data interoperability also quite specifically was identified as a huge, really huge problem.
It's massive, and the quality of data. So we've also done some work on the data that is held in data.gov to look at how much of that data is actually machine readable, so has utility in AI. And it's
big problem.
It's very poor. It's very poor. And so I kind of like, I do believe, I don't want anyone to think that I'm some sort of Luddite and don't, I do believe that these technologies have huge transformative potential. I really believe that. But that, we can't use them like blunt instruments in a way. You kind of have to, it's the right tool for the right job.
Yeah.
And in order to have the right tool, the data's has to be ready. And I do worry about some of the sort of, I worry because I think, if you start making really bold claims about how much time is going to be saved and how much money is going to get injected back into the economy, when the data just isn't ready to enable that to happen, that's, because I want those benefits to be realised. I really want that to be the case. But if we don't think about the data, the quality of the data, it's interoperable. So much data in the public sector is still in bloody filing cabinets.
Yeah.
Sorry, I swore on camera.
Well, there's also stuff that can't be shared, right? Like it's in silo and like they can't release that. And even though it would solve like a massive challenge for the country, it's just can't unlock it. So how do we figure out how to do that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What a challenge. We don't have all the answers here today, but what I would like to do is ask our panellists, we've got about 5 minutes left, for their practical next steps that the digital ethics community in the UK can take to ensure the UK stays ahead of the curve. I'm going to go the same order that we started. Sorry, Marie.
First, I think continue to do what we do. And I think reflecting what Emma was saying earlier about how much we need to be doing in terms of collaboration, we are much better, in a better place than any other country. And if you look at US, if you look at even Canada or France, our AI ecosystem is being the best in the world. And I'm not joking. It's the fact that we have this dance in between civil society and industry, and techUK is the forefront. If anything, techUK seems like the glue that brings it all together. And they do have a program on digital ethics, hence we're here. A program and an event that has been happening for 8 years. So I think to a certain extent this continue to do what we do, but also look at out of all the opportunities and challenges Emma and all the other fellow panelists have described, create a bit of a roadmap. So I really like the lessons learned we can leverage from AI. There's a lot we can pass to the other emerging technologies, but we just need to create the right forum. And I suppose that in your case, it might be that you get to invite folks from AI ethics community to be able to share what we have learned. In other cases, we can explore how different emerging technology are merging and converging, and the fact that when people will be tired to talk about artificial intelligence, we'll just talk about technology, and technology will be adaptive and will be agentic and will be, have a certain degree of autonomy. But then everything that we have learned through those different stages of AI ethics, data ethics, will be very, very useful for us to first identify the immediate harms and the existential harms. We have to do this, there's no debate. But also everything in between, because with ethics, we are able to explore in a safe space those questions we don't know. What do we do when we are in a virtual space, and instead of us talking face to face, our children end up talking to each other over the screens? How much of our humanity we lose? And this is one of the millions of ethical questions we need to be asking. And it's not just down to ethicists. And I think all of us, whilst we experiment with technologies, are the ones capable to be able to ask this question and find solution from where we are. And of course, through our, obviously professional capacity, being able to contribute to that dialogue and share experiences.
Fantastic. Thanks, Maria. Mona?
I agree. I do think there's a lot of good things which we are going on, and obviously summits like this. I think you said this was the eighth. Yeah, so that's really incredible that, there's so much happening already with the whole ethics. So I think that's a good thing, and I actually see that at least with AI or generative AI specifically, there's been a lot of sort of support or kind of policing already from different governments. The UK, obviously we started off with the the Bletchley Summit as well, which was before anything else came out, even in the US, and I know they sort of announced something literally the day after the Bletchley Summit. But so there's been a lot which has already happened. I think what I'd love to say, and obviously my own background is from technology and business, and both of these are, if there's anything new, now quantum computing as well, that's like, taking AI to the next level, or, like AI on steroids, it can help happen, all of that. But I think there should be some, from the ethics point of view, I think we do need to keep questioning that, are we using technology in the, for the reasons it should be used, and which use cases, maybe you don't need to do this with, generative AI. And we do have customers who are, who sort of question, like we had a customer which was a council, and they were using generative AI to sort of generate content like sort of letters to their customers, and obviously the customers there are people who are wanting council flats and who are looking for benefits, and they were very conscious that how do we actually use this, we have to make it transparent, we have to tell our, so I do like to see technology being used in the right way. And the other big thing is about the copyright, for example, like you're generating content, what about all these sort of the creative people and who are even like videos and things which you are generating. You need to make sure that an AI generated and a human generated output, they need to be sort of clarified, and I think that's something which needs to keep getting probed and questioned. And I like that point, right, that you don't, just because you can, we don't means that we need to do it. We need to be sort of clever about where we are using, and there's huge benefits in some right use cases, but not maybe everything.
Yeah, thanks, Mona. We've got about a minute left.
Yeah, I'll be super quick. I'm just going to agree and say collaboration. Basically, I think like whatever we can do to maximize the impact by combining all of our joint, like not full resources, like as you were saying, not everyone has the resources that they need. We all have like pieces to the puzzle, just put them all together to solve it together. And then also just doing anything possible that's like public facing, getting out of our bubbles and getting out of our little silos and helping to upskill the public, things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, completely agree on collaboration, not just between technologies, but also kind of bringing in interdisciplinary expertise. I also think more work to be done in terms of how do we operationalise and embed these principles, and how can we share tools, and where do we need to look to different tools for different technologies, and where we can leverage existing tools.
Excellent. All of the above. Work together. Work together, fund expertise. Don't allow that expertise to be lost, because if you don't fund things, then they tend to fail or fold. So let's not let that happen. Let's not reinvent wheels. So go at sort of challenges as though it's the first time we've looked at them. And then finally for me, engage with so I'm looking at this very much from a public sector point of view, but engage with the private sector, do talk to all the companies, but try to do it with your eyes open and ask difficult questions or challenging questions. It's okay to say, where did the data come from that you have used to train this? And what measures have you put in place to make sure that, it doesn't further entrench biases or cause other harms to the people about whom the data is relating. So yeah, I think those would be mine.
Fantastic. Well, before we all thank the panel, I just want to say, if you want to discuss anything that, build upon anything we discussed here today, please come and find our panelists. We've got a coffee break in just a second. Chat to me about anything techUK and emerging tech. We also have Laura, my colleague, who's kind of in the middle of the room, who leads our quantum work, so feel free to grab her as well. And finally, can I get a huge round of applause for our speakers, please?